The funeral director had warned me that grief could make people see things that weren't there. Hallucinations are common, he'd said gently. You might think you see your loved one in the crowd. But I wasn't hallucinating the blonde woman in the third row, wearing my mother's emerald necklace. The Burmese emerald suite, necklace, earrings and bracelet, had been my grandmother's, a family legacy passed to my mother on her wedding day. Worth $400,000 according to the insurance appraisal. It had vanished from Mom's house 3 weeks ago, along with several other pieces, sometime during her final fading days in hospice. And now it gleamed against the black dress of a woman I'd never seen before, like a brazen challenge. I gripped the polished pew in front of me, trying to process the impossible sight. My husband, Mark, sat beside me, his hand a weight on my back that should have been comforting. But I noticed he kept glancing subtly toward that third row. Who is that? I whispered, my voice thin. He followed my gaze and his body went rigid. I don't know, probably one of your mom's friends. My mother's friends were all in their 70s and 80s, clustered in the front. This woman couldn't be older than 35, with the kind of blonde that screamed high-end salon and a dress that knew its worth. She was also wearing my mother's ruby ring. Father Michael began the service, his words a distant drone. Every time I glanced back, more details surfaced. The diamond tennis bracelet Mom wore every Sunday. The pearl drops that had been her mother's. Piece by piece, the missing collection adorned the stranger like stolen trophies. When we stood for the first hymn, she turned slightly and our eyes met. She didn't look away. Instead she smiled, a small knowing smile that made my stomach clench cold, and then deliberately touched the emerald necklace. I need air, I choked to Mark, slipping out the side door. In the quiet courtyard, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the photos I'd taken for the police report. Every missing piece was there, decorating that woman's neck and wrists. Mrs. Davies? I spun around to find Detective Sarah Miller, the officer handling Mom's theft case, in a plain black pantsuit. Detective, what are you doing here? Following up on a tip. Someone called about seeing the stolen jewelry. He studied my face. Was it you? No, I. My voice trailed off. You can see it too. The woman inside, third row, Clara Jennings. Interesting that she'd show up here. Detective Miller pulled out her phone, showing me a driver's license photo. Same blonde, same sharp features. Recognize her? No. Should I? She's been on our radar for a while. Tends to befriend married men with access to valuable items. We've never been able to prove anything. She paused, her gaze flicking towards the church doors. Is your husband inside? Yes. The implication hit me like a slap of icy water. No, Mark wouldn't. Detective Miller's expression remained carefully neutral. How long was your mother in hospice? 6 weeks. And your husband had access to her house? We both did. We were checking on it, getting her mail, making sure. I stopped. Mark had volunteered for those tasks. Insisted I stay with Mom while he handled the house. I'd been grateful. Mrs. Davies, the detective said gently. I need you to go back inside. Act normal. Can you do that? You're going to arrest her? She's wearing $400,000 in stolen jewelry to the victim's funeral. Yes, I'm going to arrest her, but I need to do this carefully. If she's working with someone. She didn't finish, but I understood. If Mark was involved, they needed him to reveal himself. I walked back into the church on unsteady legs. Mark looked relieved when I slid beside him. Feeling better, he whispered. Yes. I laced my fingers through his, noting the clammy sweat on his palm. The service continued. Readings, hymns, memories shared. When my aunt spoke about Mom's generosity, mentioning how she'd always promised her jewelry would stay in the family, I felt Mark's hand twitch in mine. Finally, Father Michael invited everyone to share their memories. Various friends stood, telling stories of Mom's kindness, her volunteer work, her laughter. Then the blonde woman stood. I didn't know Mrs. Davies well, she began, her voice carrying clearly, almost performing. But her generosity touched my life. She gave me. She caressed the emerald necklace. Such beautiful gifts, through someone who knew I'd treasure them. The church went silent. My aunts exchanged shocked looks, their eyes darting to the jewelry. Mark's hand became a vice on mine, squeezing almost painfully. That's lovely, Father Michael said uncertainly. Would you like to share more about? Actually, Detective Miller stood from the back row. I'd like to speak with you, Miss Jennings, outside. Clara's composure cracked, just a hairline fracture. I'm attending a funeral. And wearing stolen property. We can do this quietly or I can arrest you in front of everyone. Your choice. These were gifts. Clara's voice rose, a touch of hysteria creeping in. I have proof. Perfect. You can show me outside. But Clara wasn't moving. Instead she turned to look directly at Mark. Tell them, baby. Tell them you gave these to me. Every head in the church swiveled toward us. Mark released my hand, his face cycling through raw panic, rapid calculation, and finally stark resignation. Julia. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. He stood slowly. Julia, I can explain. Explain. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that cut through the silence. Explain how my mother's jewelry ended up on your mistress? It wasn't like that. Your mom was dying. She didn't need. My dying mother didn't need her family heirlooms? My voice rose, cutting him off. So you stole them for your girlfriend. Fiancée, Clara corrected, holding up her left hand. My mother's 3-carat diamond solitaire caught the light from the stained glass windows. A blinding flash of betrayal. The church erupted. My aunts shouted. My cousins stood. Father Michael tried desperately to restore order. Through it all, Detective Miller moved steadily down the aisle toward Clara. Mr. Davies, she called to Mark. I'll need to speak with you as well. I didn't steal anything. Mark protested, his voice cracking. I had a key. Julia gave me access to care for the house, not rob it. Your mom was dying. The jewelry was just sitting there. Clara deserved. My mother wasn't even dead yet. The words ripped from my throat, raw and anguished. You were stealing from her while I sat by her bedside. Detective Miller had reached Clara, who was backing away. Miss Jennings, you're under arrest for receiving stolen property. He gave them to me. He said his wife didn't care about jewelry, that it would be wasted. I never said that. Mark interjected, desperate. No. What about the text where you said she was too boring to appreciate nice things? Or your promise to marry me once you got your share of her mother's estate? I sank back into the pew. Around me, my family closed ranks, hands on my shoulders, voices offering support. But I could only stare at Mark, the stranger wearing my husband's face. How long? I asked quietly. He couldn't meet my eyes. Julia, how long? 2 years. 2 years. I thought about all the times he'd worked late, traveled for business, been too tired for dinner. All the times he'd volunteered to check on Mom's house alone. Detective Miller had cuffed Clara, who was now sobbing, mascara running down her face. This isn't fair. He promised. He said once the old lady died. Shut up. Mark snapped, glaring at Clara. The old lady? My Aunt Eleanor, Mom's sister, stood, her voice shaking with fury. That old lady was a saint who welcomed you into our family, Mark. She defended you when we said you weren't good enough for Julia. And this is how you repay her? Stealing from her deathbed. I want a lawyer, Clara announced, regaining a sliver of composure. Good idea, Detective Miller said. Mr. Davies, I need you to come with me as well. Am I under arrest? Not yet, but we need to discuss your involvement in the theft. Mark looked at me desperately, his eyes pleading. Julia, please. I made a mistake. We can work through this. Work through this. I stood, finally finding my strength, my voice clear and unwavering. You stole my dying mother's jewelry to give to your mistress? Fiancée. Wore it to her funeral? There's nothing to work through. As Detective Miller led them out, Clara still protesting about gifts and promises, the church slowly settled into a stunned murmur. My mother's picture smiled serenely from the front. And I wondered if somewhere she was laughing at the absolute soap opera her funeral had become. Well, Aunt Eleanor said finally, breaking the silence. Your mother always said Mark was too smooth. Guess she was right even at the end. Father Michael cleared his throat. Perhaps we should continue with the service. We did somehow. My cousin read a poem. My uncle shared stories. We sang Mom's favorite hymn. And through it all I felt strangely calm. The worst had already happened. Mark's betrayal, the theft, the public humiliation. It was all laid bare now. After the service in the reception hall, Detective Miller found me. We've recovered all the jewelry, she said. Miss Jennings was very cooperative once she realized your husband had lied about owning the pieces. What happens now? They'll both be charged. Theft, receiving stolen property, conspiracy. Your husband admitted to taking the jewelry, but claims it was a loan. A loan from a woman in hospice? Yes, his story needs work. She paused. I'm sorry this happened at your mother's funeral. Actually, I said, surprising myself with the lightness in my voice. I think Mom would have loved it. She always enjoyed a good drama and she never liked Mark. This was like her final review. That evening, after the guests had gone and the flowers had been distributed, I sat in Mom's empty house with the recovered jewelry spread before me. Each piece had a story, a history. The emerald suite alone had survived 3 generations. Mark had seen only their monetary value. But Mom had seen their true worth. Connections to the women who'd worn them before, promises of the women who'd wear them after. My phone buzzed with over 50 messages from Mark. I deleted them unread and called a divorce attorney instead. My husband stole from my dying mother to impress his mistress, I told him. That's a new one, he said. But helpful for the divorce. When can you come in? I fingered the emerald necklace, thinking of Mom's last coherent words to me. Don't let anyone dim your sparkle, sweetheart. Tomorrow, I said. I have a funeral to finish today. Later I learned the full story. Mark and Clara had met at a conference 2 years ago. He promised to leave me after things settled down. First after his promotion, then after the holidays, then after Mom got sick. He'd been stealing from Mom's house for months. Small pieces at first, things he thought I wouldn't notice. Clara, for her part, genuinely believed Mark was rich and generous. She'd been posting photos of gifts from my love on Instagram, which is how Detective Miller had been alerted. A sharp-eyed follower recognized the distinctive emerald suite from a magazine feature about estate jewelry. The trial was swift. Mark pled guilty to avoid a harsher sentence, got 2 years probation and had to pay restitution. Claire got community service and had to return everything. Their relationship didn't survive the first court appearance. Mark's last email to me before I blocked him everywhere was a masterpiece of self-pity. He was the real victim apparently. Seduced by a younger woman, trapped in a loveless marriage, forced to desperate measures. He actually used the phrase, driven to it by circumstances. I wore the emerald suite to the divorce proceedings. The judge, an elderly woman with sharp eyes, noticed immediately. Beautiful jewelry, she commented. Thank you. It was my mother's. My ex-husband tried to give it to his mistress. Did he now? She reviewed the papers with renewed interest. The divorce was finalized in record time. I got everything except Mark's debts from financing Clara's lifestyle. A year later, I wore the emerald suite again, this time to an exhibition of Mom's art collection. Pieces Mark had never known existed because he'd never bothered to really know her. The charity auction raised $50,000 for the hospice that had cared for her.